Have you ever locked eyes with someone across a crowded room, a stranger, maybe someone you had never spoken a single word to in your entire life, and felt something shift inside your chest? Not dramatically, not like in the movies, but quietly, subtly. Like a door somewhere deep inside you had just been nudged open without your permission. You looked away, they looked away, and yet you could not stop thinking about it. That moment lasted maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3, but it stayed with you for hours, maybe days. Here is the thing most people never stop to ask. Why? Why does something as simple as eye contact, two people looking at each other, carry so much emotional weight? Why does it make your heart beat faster? Why does it create a sense of connection so powerful that poets have written about it for thousands of years and scientists are still trying to fully explain it? The answer is not romantic. Well, not entirely. The answer is psychological. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your brain and body during those moments of eye contact, you will never look at another person the same way again. So let us talk about the hidden psychology behind eye contact and romantic attraction, and why your eyes are doing far more work than you have ever given them credit for. Human beings are one of the only species on the planet with clearly visible whites around their irises. This is not a coincidence. Scientists believe this evolved specifically so that other humans could track the direction of our gaze. In other words, your eyes were designed by evolution to communicate. Think about what that means for a moment.
Before language, before words, before any sophisticated form of human communication existed, our ancestors were reading each other's eyes. They were using eye contact to signal safety, danger, interest, and intention. Eye contact was one of the very first languages our species ever spoke, and it is still speaking. When you make eye contact with someone, your brain does not simply register the fact that someone is looking at you. It launches an entire cascade of neurological and physiological responses. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing emotions and social signals, activates almost immediately. Your nervous system begins assessing the situation. Is this person a threat? Are they friendly? Are they interested? All of this happens in fractions of a second. Long before you have formed a conscious thought, your brain has already started making decisions based on eye contact alone. Now here is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Research in social neuroscience has found that prolonged eye contact, specifically mutual gazing, where two people look into each other's eyes simultaneously, triggers the release of oxytocin in the brain. You have probably heard of oxytocin. It is commonly called the bonding hormone, or the love chemical. It is the same hormone released between a mother and her newborn child during those first moments of skin-to-skin contact. It is the same hormone that floods your system when you embrace someone you deeply love. And it can be triggered simply by looking into someone's eyes. A landmark study conducted by researcher Arthur Aron in 1997 discovered something extraordinary. He found that when two strangers spent time asking each other increasingly personal questions and then stared into each other's eyes for 4 minutes, just 4 minutes, many of them reported feeling deeply connected to each other. Some of them even fell in love. 2 of the participants ended up getting married. 4 minutes of eye contact. That is the chemical power of a gaze.
But oxytocin is only part of the story. Eye contact also influences dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When someone you find attractive meets your gaze and holds it, your brain interprets this as a form of social reward. It feels good. It feels significant. Your brain learns to associate that person's face with pleasure, and it wants more of that feeling. This is why you keep looking at them. This is why you keep thinking about them after the moment has passed. Here is something most people do not realize. Eye contact is not just a reaction to attraction. It is also a creator of attraction. This is one of the most counterintuitive and powerful discoveries in social psychology. We tend to think that we look at people we like, but the reverse is equally true. We begin to like people we look at. The act of sustained eye contact itself generates feelings of closeness and affection between two people. Psychologist Zick Rubin studied this phenomenon in the 1970s. He found that couples who were deeply in love spent significantly more time looking at each other than couples who were less deeply connected. But more importantly, when strangers were instructed to maintain eye contact with each other during conversation, they consistently reported higher levels of affection and attraction toward each other afterward. The gaze was not just measuring love, it was manufacturing it. This happens because of a psychological principle called misattribution of arousal. When you are in a state of mild physiological arousal, elevated heart rate, heightened alertness, a slight sense of nervousness or excitement, and you associate that feeling with a person in front of you, your brain interprets the arousal as attraction. Eye contact creates arousal, and then your brain hands that arousal over to the person whose eyes you are looking into. So that stranger you locked eyes with across the crowded room, your brain was not just noticing them, it was building a case for why you should feel something about them. Of course, eye contact is not a simple one-size-fits-all experience. There is an entire invisible grammar to it, a set of unspoken rules that govern how we use eye contact in social situations, and romantic contexts in particular. Consider the difference between a glance and a gaze. A glance is brief. It is the eye contact we make during normal conversation, quick checks, momentary connections, the social lubrication that keeps interaction flowing. Research suggests that during typical conversation, we make eye contact roughly 60 to 70% of the time. Too little, and we seem disengaged or untrustworthy. Too much, and we seem aggressive or unsettling. But a gaze is different. A gaze lingers. A gaze breaks the social contract of casual eye contact and enters new emotional territory. When someone holds your gaze longer than what feels like casual, your brain immediately registers it as meaningful. It starts asking questions. Why are they still looking? What does this mean? Do they? Could they? And this is where romantic attraction enters the conversation. Studies in nonverbal communication have found that people who are attracted to each other naturally increase their eye contact duration. It is not a calculated decision. It happens automatically, driven by the same biological impulses that govern all human mating behavior. Your body is communicating something that your voice has not yet found the courage to say. There is also what psychologists call the triangle gaze, the pattern of eye movement that tends to emerge in romantic contexts. During normal social interaction, our gaze moves back and forth between the other person's eyes. But as romantic interest increases, the gaze begins to dip down to the mouth and back up again. This is not a conscious decision. It is the body expressing interest before the mind has fully acknowledged it. If you have ever caught yourself doing this, or noticed someone doing it to you, now you know what it meant. Here is something that rarely gets discussed in conversations about eye contact and attraction: the profound vulnerability required to truly meet someone's gaze. Think about how uncomfortable it is to hold eye contact with a stranger for more than a few seconds. Most of us look away. We check our phones. We glance at the ceiling. We find something fascinating happening just over the other person's shoulder. We do everything we can to avoid the weight of a direct gaze. Why? Because being truly seen by another person is terrifying. The eyes, as the old saying goes, are the windows to the soul. And while that phrase has become something of a cliché, there is genuine psychological truth behind it. When you allow someone to hold your gaze when you do not look away, when you stay present in that moment of mutual seeing, you are allowing them access to something unfiltered and unguarded in you. Your micro-expressions, your emotional state, the truth behind whatever carefully constructed face you present to the world. This is why depth of eye contact correlates so strongly with emotional intimacy. It is not just chemical, It is not just neurological, it is the willingness to be known. And that willingness, that choice to stay present in the vulnerability of being seen, is one of the most fundamentally human things we can offer each other. When someone holds your gaze without flinching, without looking away, without hiding, they are saying something to you. Not in words, but clearly. I see you, and I'm not afraid of what I see. Now it is important to acknowledge that eye contact does not carry the same meaning in every culture and for every individual. In many Western cultures, direct eye contact is associated with confidence, honesty, and romantic interest. But in a number of East Asian, Middle Eastern, and African cultures, prolonged direct eye contact can be considered disrespectful, aggressive, or overly forward, particularly when directed towards someone of a higher social status or towards someone of the opposite gender. Additionally, for individuals who are neurodivergent, including many people on the autism spectrum, the social rules around eye contact can feel deeply unnatural and even physically uncomfortable. This does not reflect a lack of social interest or emotional depth. It simply means that eye contact carries a different weight and requires a different level of processing for different brains. Understanding these variations is essential. Eye contact is a powerful tool, but it must always be interpreted in context with cultural sensitivity, individual awareness, and a genuine willingness to understand rather than assume. So let us bring this back to that moment. The one across the crowded room. The one that lasted 2 or 3 seconds and somehow stayed with you for hours. What was really happening in that moment? Your evolutionarily ancient brain was firing. Your oxytocin was rising. Your dopamine was responding. Your nervous system was making assessments. And underneath all of that biology and chemistry, 2 human beings were doing something quietly extraordinary. They were choosing for just a moment to be seen by each other. That is what eye contact really is. At its most honest and fundamental level, it is not just attraction, it is not just chemistry, it is a small but radical act of human presence. It is saying, without words, I am here, I see you, you are real to me. And in a world where so many of us spend so much of our lives looking at screens, at phones, at everything except each other, that is not a small thing. That is everything. So the next time you find yourself holding someone's gaze a second longer than expected, or catching someone doing the same to you, do not just brush it off. Your brain is speaking. Your body is speaking. Listen to what they are saying. Because the eyes were never just for seeing the world, they were for showing it.